Welcome to C100 Global Wisdom Talks, the podcast where we explore transformative ideas and practical strategies for entrepreneurial families navigating the complex worlds of family wealth, family offices, and governance. Danny Kurtesh and Jan Petka are your guides on this journey as we uncover insights from the world's most brilliant minds and thought leaders shaping the future of intergenerational success. Before we dive in, let me introduce C100 Global, a peer network for entrepreneurial families and families of wealth. Our mission is to empower families to build meaningful legacies and become thriving 100-year families through a focus on dynamics, governance, and strategic collaboration. And now, let's start our conversation.
Welcome, everybody, to our new episode of C100 Wisdom Talks. Today, we're happy, glad, enlightened to have Jay Hughes with us. Jay is now the third time with us. So to our listeners, to our viewers who haven't seen the first two episodes, I highly recommend the first two ones. If you are interested in getting right into the new topic that we're talking about today, of course, you can listen on. And good morning to you, Jay. It's afternoon in Europe. Good morning to the US, Jay. I'll give the word over to Jan, who will make the introduction.
So welcome everyone to this third series of our Global Wisdom Talk, and it's my distinguished pleasure to have you, Jay, once again on our talk today. And we have the most interested and the most important topic for our talk is selected, and that's just the question of the cycle of gift. And what I mean by the cycle of gift, we are standing in front of it's actually it's moved on these great wealth transfer in history, and we will see that there will be a $1 trillion or more than $100 trillion wealth gift will be transferred from the boomer generation to the Gen Zs. And before we jump in our talk, Jay, give our audience or to the listeners who have never had the opportunity to meet you on the screen or in person, just a little brief introduction of yourself, and then let's start our discussion.
Well, welcome to our audience. As I've said before, your wealth is your treasure. It's your time, and that you're choosing to share it with us is a blessing to the three of us. I would say simply this: I'm an 82-year-old man. I live in Aspen, Colorado. I've been a lawyer since 1967, and my interest in my professional career has been the questions of families and their flourishing, and in turn, the capacity of those families to help the societies they are part of flourish. Of course, it begins with the individual in that family. Is he or she flourishing? Is it flourishing? And then, is it helping societies flourish?
So, Jay, can I pick up your view on this largest wealth transfer, what we see at this time ongoing? What is your perspective on this? Is it just a great treasure? Is it just a great challenge? What is it actually?
Well, Jan and Danny and our audience, I would ask you to start your minds wherever you are, back about 70 years ago. The world was a terrible mess after the Second World War. Things were flattened. Many people had died. People were homeless, no food. And so the question was what to do. And in my view, one of the great efforts ever made by one state to another, our great friends in Germany this morning, General Marshall in America said to President Truman, let's give the money back. Let's give the spoils of war back to our new friends. Let's never think of them as enemies. The same thing happened in Japan. And I believe that that act of benevolence, a gift, isn't that interesting? Yes, we had to trade, but it was basically a gift, is still working in the world. And I believe that that is what's underlying the abundance that we are now sharing. When we look around the world, we see that in those 70 years of peace, basic peace, we have accumulated literally hundreds of trillions of dollars of worth, of value, of useful things. Now, the people who created that wealth as money, that is, they took energy and made it matter, things, are dying rapidly. I'm in the silent generation, Hans. I'm even earlier than the boomers, and I will be conveying some small amounts of wealth in financial terms to my children, and eventually, hopefully, they to my grandchildren. What's going on here? Well, what it looks like as you look around the world is an economic activity of what I will call capital intermediation. Those are big English words, but basically taking money from one account and put it in another account. And of course, there's huge excitement in the financial industry. By the way, it could be a good investment. I'm teasing. I'm the world's worst investor. Don't take that as a benefit. But I do think the financial community will be very busy over the next 50 years, essentially intermediating that money. The problem, however, is this is not an economic event. This is actually a social event. And as I've said in some of these earlier talks, any really important question, as you learn in college, you have to decide in order its economic, social, political, cultural, and spiritual levels. This looks like it leads with economics. It doesn't. It leads with social. What do I mean by that? I mean that every single person who receives a piece of this movement of financial capital has an integration problem. What did he say? Yes, I said every single person around the world who will receive some part of this massive wave of financial capital will have an integration problem. I can tell you all with great conviction that since 1967, when I started practicing law, I have represented hundreds and hundreds of families around the world, all over the world. Every single assignment was an integration problem. Every one. How do we integrate something we didn't create into ourselves, and what happens to us? As you know, Jan and Danny, I call this the problem of the meteor. To me, the image I was given many years ago to think about this is that someone sends a meteor out into inner space, even if it's a second from one hand to another, and then that meteor has to be integrated. The great social question for all people all over the world will be what's in that meteor when they receive it. And that looks like money, doesn't it? No, my dear friends at C100 and you wonderful people who took your time today. No, 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 no. What is in that meteor is the relationship between the person who sends it and the person who receives it. Now you begin to see how complex that meteor is. It looks like money. The bankers say, fine, capital intermediation. No, 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 it is not. It is your relationships. It is all of the things that link you to that. And so, to some here, here's the question. When that meteor is sent out into space, and that's our question for today, are you making a transfer or are you making a gift? Big question mark.
I want to exactly take this point. Can you maybe define what a real gift looks like, so people can understand what is the difference between a transfer and a gift?
I can't, but Aristotle could. Um, Aristotle, in his huge, wonderful book on virtue, said that among the virtues of courage and justice and prudence and temperance that we all grow up with in the West, or obviously Eastern has empathy and other kinds of things, but in the West, we grow up with Aristotelian virtues. And Aristotle said one of the virtues is benevolence. But then he said something, Danny, that I think is just marvelous. He said a real gift, which he says is very rare and very difficult to make, must reach the level of magnificence. And by that he meant magnanimity, big heartedness, love. So if one wants to make a gift, it is a magnificent act of love. If it isn't giving you joy, don't do it. Or if you want to make a transfer, make a transfer, but don't call it a gift because it isn't. Aristotle was right. Anything less than that act of magnificence, of beneficence, of something, magnanimity, the big-heartedness. I know that's a hard word for people to hear, but it is the condition of big-heartedness, isn't it? That's a gift. So what are you putting in your meteor? Now, what is a transfer? Pretty much everything else is a transfer. And depending, by the way, on how many strings you put on the transfer, you could actually be making what Maimonides, another of the great sages of our time, said was to give less than you could and grudgingly. Ooh, ouch, ouch, huh? That's a somebody could call that a gift. It isn't. It's a profound transfer with lots of obligation. So as you work up through transfer, you're taking off obligations, you're creating opportunities. Can you feel that? You're lightening the load of the meteor. You're giving it more light and less darkness. You're getting closer and closer to full light, to full illumination, which is a gift.
If you look at the person who gives the gift, the wealth creator, let's call him like this, G1, G2, whatever generation, they often have the impression that, number one, what they achieved, what they did for their immediate family, their greater family, maybe even for society. And when they're giving something to the next generation, this is a gift per se. This is something so great, so, as you said, magnificent, that the other one should be already happy to receive it. You mentioned the word love. And many of these people would argue, well, they love their family, they love the society they're in, they love the gift that they're living on, so the receiver should also love that. In this thought, is the giver wrong, or is it maybe something that he's missing in this view, or is he just having a wrong picture of what he's giving on?
Well, that's a hugely important and very big topic. So I'm going to do my best to squeeze it for something that fits this conversation. But I can assure you, Donnie, it is exactly the conversation the potential transferor or donor, so transfer person making a transfer, making a gift, must have with him or herself before they act. But what you've done beautifully in that question is you have stated the state of mind and heart of the person before he or she acts. That's everything. Because remember, what you put into the meteor is what the person has to integrate. Now, you use the word should. Let me say that anytime we use the minor key, The subjunctive in English, should, could, would, it's a weak word. Shall, will, and can are the major key. So if I should do something, I'm already in the minor key. I'm already looking at obligation. I'm already in trouble if I want to make a gift. Now, here's another part that's complex of the same question. Let's assume for the moment that I have done something in my lifetime that really should be impossible. I'm going to say not normative. That is not usual, but really should be impossible. What have I done that's impossible? I've taken energy from the energy body of the universe and I've turned it into matter. Let me say that again. I've done something, it's very, very unusual, not normative. I have taken energy from the energy body of the universe and I have made it matter. This is an extraordinary act by a human being and should be honored and recognized. Now the question is, since the person receiving this will never do that, they will rather receive matter, can we understand how different that is in their experience of what they're receiving? Because their problem will be what I call dynamic regeneration of that which they receive. They have an entirely different problem. So if I give them something on the theory that they will take more energy and make it matter, that's just not going to happen. It's not impossible, but it's so rare. But really what I want to do is to say, I need to understand what they're receiving. They're not receiving my life. They're receiving something I created. And how joyfully can I help them feel that creation, but not have an expectation that they will live my life? No. The great question is, how will they live theirs? That is the great question for the donor, for the giver, isn't it? If a real gift.
So, Jay, you described, in my point of view, just a little bit a kind of dynamic, right? What could be in place if this scenario will be happen, and I'm quite convinced it will be happen in thousands of families around the globe at this time.
Let's make it millions.
Of millions, yeah, probably. So, I mean, from my point of view, there are dynamics. It could be in a dynamic in a positive way, probably, or it could be also end up in tensions between the giver and the recipients, and this kind of tensions. And I would be more than happy if you can describe a little bit what kind of tensions could be in place in this scenario, and also what could be the solution to solve these kind of tensions, probably, to make this gift just as a gift, not as a great obligation or stuff like that, right?
Yes. Well, let me say, of course, people who have given us their treasure, their time today, this is incredibly complex. I don't want any of you to feel that this is an easy subject that my dear friend Jan and my friend Donnie are throwing at me. These are the most important decisions you will make. I promise you, because you'll be gone. And the question is, how are you remembered?
Yeah.
What do you want to be remembered for? By the way, to give you a little bit of a laugh on a very, very solemn subject, when I ask great entrepreneurs who have taken energy and made it matter, who are about to have a meeting with their grandchildren, formal meeting with their grandchildren, and they're going to give a little talk, they ask me, well, what do my grandchildren want to hear? They want to know if you were ever 10 years old. Really? Yeah. Yeah, were you ever a kid? Who are you, Grandpa? You like me? Who are you? Ah, you see? So what we must do to make a great gift is consider as best we can how we have been in either right or not so right relationship with the person on whom we're going to act. That's a profoundly important question. It's not asking for psychotherapy. Oh dear, I didn't try. No, 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 nowhere. Don't go there, please. No, it's just asking, what was my relationship with this person? Now, by the way, any gift is accompanied with a note, and not a note of the 10 things you must do to prove yourself worthy, but with one line that says, I love you.
That's
Yeah. By the way, there's nothing that keeps you in your will or your trust or your testamentary documents from starting it out by saying, I love you. Nothing. May not be in the lawyer's word processor, but remember, it's your document. Or write a letter that goes along with it. It says, I love you. This is why I did what I did. I hope, here are my hopes for you. Here are my aspirations. I love you. What can I hope this will give you, your aspirations, a chance to come to life? That's a gift. And we know how to do this, by the way. This is not impossible. We just have to think very carefully, how do I wish to be remembered for making transfers, for making gifts?
If I mean the issue of being remembered is huge. Should you have a discussion with the recipient before the lawyer starts reading the testament and you're not there to explain?
Oh, yes, if you can. Absolutely, if you can. And while many of us won't be able to do that, every person who I know who could do that, again, not from a psychotherapy, oh, I must fix
Mhm.
this relationship, oh, this was wrong. No, saying, I love you and I want to give you a gift in the hope that your aspirations will be enabled, that it will help those aspirations become inspirations and you'll be able to actuate them. You'll be able to bring them to life. This is dynamic regeneration. Can you feel it? The regeneration of the act of the genesis of that energy to matter. No, we can't do that again, but it's like that because that recipient is now doing regeneration. Feel that? Regenesis. And this is not setting up another business. It might be. It's anything that is that recipient's aspiration. And by the way, as Freud said, the most important thing for happiness is to learn to love and to learn to work. Vocation. Money, by the way, he said was the most difficult problem because no one would speak about it. You asked the core Freudian question: will you speak about it? Will you take the time to sit with that recipient and help him learn to love? That is that reaction you're in, and discover how to work in the right sense of all the vocations that are possible. That's dynamic regeneration. And by the way, those people who have had that kind of talk based on love, not 15 duties, guess what? They integrate this quite easily.
mm,
They don't fight it and try to spend it, or flee from it and try to give it away, or become frozen for the rest of their lives by it. No, they go into flow. Of course they do.
if it
Because if somebody thought, sorry, was it somebody thought for them, my goodness, I'm creating for them an integration problem. I never thought of that. I just thought I'm making them happy. I'm sending them money. No, dear friends, that's not what's happening. They're getting in that meteor what you put in it, and that's all the things we're talking about this morning. That's what they're integrating. Jan.
so is it just Jay, I mean, there is one part what I understood. It's in clear, honest communication, right? And that's in most cases missing. Right?
And particularly about money, because as Freud said, no one nice person can talk about it. So let's all be human. Let's think. Freud got this one right. This is really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. So, and number two is, could it be a right approach to, I mean, if there is just a communication in place, right? And the next step could be, okay, the what of the giving, what kind of combination, what kind of structure we bring in place. I mean, that could be financial assets, it could be something like that, right? To make the gift just easier to integrate, and asking the recipient previously, what could be the right path for you that you that you that makes it easier to understand and also to integrate. Is this in some cases in place, or is it just from your experience, it is only money? Gift is just
Now, Jan, what you're asking, I think, is how opportunistic can we be and when? The universe, I find, is infinitely kind. Mother Nature is infinitely kind. The question is, are we thinking with her about how that kindness can be actuated? Well, the first thing is we have to be opportunistic.
Mhm.
We have to wait and see, is there a moment when this is right? Um, I hesitate to give American examples, but this one I hope is enough universal because many universities around the world are free. But one of the things that I counsel grandparents, and in America, most of the tuitions, because our universities are very expensive, are actually paid by grandparents. Because that's who's that, as Willie Sutton said, that's who's got the money. So what do I counsel? I said, well, look, one of the great opportunities for a young person to have a gift is to have a gift of an education.
Mm.
Yes, you come from a upper class or a rich family and everybody anticipates you go to college. No, not necessarily. And in America, you have to compete to get in. You do in Europe and Asia as well. And I mean, in China, what is it? One child and a million gets to Peking University.
Mm.
So I've said to grandparents, look, what an incredible opportunity for you and the grandchildren to know why it matters to you that they've decided to go to college and how much you want to help them. Isn't that wonderful? What an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it's going to happen. That's the wonderful thing about it. Or look, if you're an older grandparent and you think you might not live all the way to all your grandchildren getting to college, get those letters written to each of them. They're 4 or 5 years old. Write the letter. When you're 17 or 18, I've set this aside for you because I love you and you have achieved going to college. Your education is your gift. The money is simply the means of. So it's being opportunistic, isn't this? This is not rocket science,
True.
but it's hard. But it's hard.
True. True. True.
You came up, Jay, in one of your books with this interesting concept of the family bank, and how the family can use the financial wealth to enhance the qualitative financial capital, the qualitative capitals that the family can have. Can you dwell a bit into this subject and explain what you mean by family bank? What is it exactly?
Danny, when was I thought minding my business and visiting my parents about 6 months after my youngest sister, who's 8 years younger than I, had graduated from college. I just thought I was home for a visit. And Saturday morning, I got up and had breakfast when my mother cooked us a wonderful breakfast. And my father said, "Oh, I would like to have a moment with you." That tended to be likely to be a long conversation. So we went into his study. He was a Victorian man. He was born after Queen Victoria, but he was a very old-fashioned man. And I was the oldest child, and I have a younger brother and two younger sisters. And so the way it worked was, and he was also a very serious lawyer, not like me, an unserious lawyer. And so I knew this was going to be a while. And he said, "Jay, I want you to know your mother and I have become a bank." I was completely, what are you talking about? You're a lawyer. My mother's taking care of children and running schools and things. He said, "No, we're a bank." And he said, "It's very simple." Well, when my father said it was simple, this was hopeless. It was at least 2 hours. This was hopeless. So I sat there and I said, "Dad, you're not a bank." And we said, "We are a bank." He said, "Let me explain." He said, "Your mother and I, who were Depression era children, started our marriage with nothing, saved like crazy, sent you all to decent education. And we had a goal as a couple. And that was that we would send you to independent schools, the best we could find, and hope that we could afford to do that for all four of you." He said, "A few months ago, your younger sister graduated from college." I said, "Yes." He said, "So we had completed our plans." He said, "Now," he said, "here's where we are." He said, "Your mother and I have saved very rigorously, as that generation did." And he said, "So we have extra resources, financial resources, that we don't think we need as old people. We think we have enough money to be sick and old and what have you, so we will never be a burden on you. But we think we have extra resources." And he said, "I don't really believe in inheritances. I believe in getting the money to work now," which is a very interesting concept. He said, "Let's not wait. Let's get the energy of that money work." So he said, "Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you and your brother and sisters to agree to become the board of a bank, not a real bank. No, this is informal. This is our family. And a bank window that's open for grants or loans, either one. And when any of you has a request that you might otherwise have brought to us, you bring it to the board with a business plan. And you all decide what to do." He said, "Now I will keep a veto, but," he said, "I have complete and total confidence in you that I'll never exercise it." I want to tell you that is the greatest spiritual act, not praising my father, I've I have been involved in personally, because he was saying, these resources have no control over me at all. They're part of the energy body of the universe. I want them in work. I want them at work. Now, he wasn't becoming a monk. He wasn't taking a vow of poverty. No, he was a very sound Victorian Anglo-Saxon man. And he had plenty of money to make sure he and my mother would be fine. But this freeing, both of him and freeing the resources, is a wonderful thing to do. Now, I want to make one very clear distinction for our wonderful audience. This idea that I received from him and I've written about, unfortunately, has been taken by people in the planning and financial industries to suggest to a family it should have a venture capital business. That is not what this is. By the way, I am perfectly in favor of a family, if it decides to, having a pot of money to go into venturing investments and asking younger generation that may have been to business school to work with that. But that's not what this is. This is, all aspirations are open for possibility. Grants or loans. Loans should be paid back. Grants are one time. But this is all the things a family needs for its rising generation, my generation in this case. I'm 82. It's hard to be rising.
Mhm.
Even in the morning, it's very hard to be rising, believe me. But this is an incredibly freeing act. So let me be very clear to the audience. I'm not suggesting you impoverish yourselves or you reduce your resources. No. What I'm suggesting is creating a fund that the rising generation is responsible for to enable aspirations to come true and is a wonderful thing for a family to do. And by the way, the stories that come out of that, and then there's one other little hidden aspect that I think my mom and dad understood. The great problem for a family, and we've talked about this in this series, is inertia. Remember, we've talked that there's fusion, which is 1+1 makes 3, which is a goal of any human or any organization or organism in this universe. We've also said that fission, too much heat, the family blows up, is good to sell newspapers. Almost all families, gentlemen, that I have known who have not succeeded in reaching their fourth and fifth generations in good shape have died from inertia, too cold. The bodies resting next to each other, not in connection, not in communication. You see, the secret of the family bank is you enable that connection in the best possible way as you continue the gift.
Yeah.
Yes, there are loans, but it's a gift. It's that capital has been freed. It's been given in a sense, subject to thoughtful exercise, a committee of business plans. But that, of course, in the secret of it is it creates fusion. As you work with your siblings, as you work with your first cousins, you get to know them. Oh my goodness. Isn't it subtle but brilliant?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Jay, let's take our final round, and I will come up with the question because we have to discuss also in our previous series in regards of, and I will bring this in front in each series in regards of the role of the person de confiance in the structure in this systematic approach to make this, let's say, this transformational relationship with a gift, just bring it more or give it just the opportunity to enlighten the individuals more. Can you give us just in our audience just a little taste? How can in person de confiance support each of the family members, but also the entire family in this process to give this gift in the right direction?
Well, let me say first, as my great teacher says, what shouldn't be done. And then let's talk about what should be done. What shouldn't be done is a conversation about structure of the gift. That's right away to a transfer. Well, should it be in a company? Should it be in a trust? Should it be in a... Wow, that kills the conversation. What really matters is that the person de confiance understands that what the integration problem will likely be for each person in that family system when they receive the meteor.
Yeah.
That's his or her task, because remember, the person de confiance's greatest service is provided in the interregnums in families when the transitions are occurring. That's when we serve our greatest purpose. So we must know, how is it likely that this integration will occur? Now, if this client, this wonderful person who's the founder that we're helping, has sadly had a very distant relationship with one of his or her children, then we perhaps can gently say, perhaps your letter needs to be a little longer to this one. Perhaps this one that is your clone. Hi, Joe, I love you. Oh, maybe that's all it's needed for integration. But maybe Sally needs a little more. Maybe Sally needs to know that you love her. Yes, I know you tell me you do love her, but does she know that? Well, it's been difficult. She had a divorce, and that guy, well, I mean, you can hear the stories start to come. Of course, this is family. This is not some esoteric academic exercise. No, this is messy. This is messy.
Yeah.
So maybe the letter needs to be a little longer. And maybe you need to spend a little more time with Sally. Well, don't tell me, well, I'm your person de confiance. You asked my opinion. You do what you want. You're the client, not me. I'm just the guy who's trying to help you on the journey because you asked me to. If you don't want to take my advice, it's fine. I won't leave. I'm going to abandon you. But have you thought about what you might need to talk to Sally about? Hmm, I see what you're saying. That doesn't mean person does anything, but our role is to ask the what if questions. Have you considered? Have you considered? How do you want to be remembered? Knowing that every person, I want to say it again, who receives a meteor and these hundreds of trillions of dollars has a personal integration problem. They will need to integrate what's in that meteor into their atmosphere, into themselves. And then, depending upon how that integration goes, will determine whether they fight it by trying to spend it, flee from it, try to give it away, frozen by it, life stops. They're a nice guy, nice wife, nice car, nice house at the country club. Nice, nice, nice. What's going on in that person? Nothing. Frozen. Or are they in flow? Are they? How does the integration work? So that's the person de confiance's role in this particular part of his or her service to that family's flourishing. Is can I help that process be gifts rather than transfers, or at least not those transfers that Maimonides said were not gifts, that were down there low in the level of action. Transfer or gift, our subject for today.
Let me ask one more question because I guess you experienced it a lot. We're experiencing it too. Even if the concept of gift is understood, there is a moment where you have to like formalize and become transactional. And then the strings start to come into place.
Right.
How would you, what advice would you give to us, to our listeners, to other personnes de confiance in helping this transition when once it is clear what the gift is and the gift is accepted, and then to form this into a structure where the person d'affaires, the experts, can come in and do something with.
Yeah. Danny, one of the people in our field, Matthew Wesley, who you guys know, wrote an incredibly important paper in this field called Culture Eats Structure for Breakfast. He took Peter Drucker's great comment, Structure Eats Strategy for Breakfast, and he changed it. Culture Eats Structure for Breakfast. We're talking entirely in this wonderful sharing this morning of culture. Are we creating a culture of gifts, or are we creating a culture of transfers? The person d'affaires, when the time comes for the structure, has to be able to understand what the culture is that he or she is going to put into the structure. The person de confiance's task is to help the client and the structuralist convey the culture that must then enable these things. So let me give you an example. In America, again, I'm sorry for American examples, but I think these are more or less universal. We have created thousands of trusts, millions of them probably, and in Britain and the other common law countries. By the way, in your civil laws, you create layers of holding companies to achieve more or less the same purpose. So many, many years ago, with some colleagues, when I started writing trusts, we changed the very top lines. What do they say? They say, this trust is a gift of love. This trust exists to enhance the lives of its beneficiaries. Then 40 pages of boilerplate. But now the beneficiary and the trustee know what their job is. This is a gift of love. Oh, I see. That's its culture. Not saving taxes and avoiding creditors. It'll do that, but that's not what we're talking about. We said right here in bold type, this is a gift of love. And then comes this second sentence. This trust exists to enhance the lives of its beneficiaries. Now, the structuralists can do all they want with the next 40 pages, but the beneficiary and the trustee are safe from those 40 pages because they know their job. That's the culture. So what matters tremendously to whether that thing succeeds culturally is the culture in it? Is the qualitative question of the relationships of the human beings in that structure the most important thing, not the quantitative issues. Qualitative issues. Will it be a gift of love? Will it enhance the lives of its beneficiaries? We have to be tough on the structuralists, not unkind, but we have to say, if your structure deadens this relationship, then we mustn't do it. We have to keep looking away from you, sir or madam structuralist, to another structuralist. We have to find our way carefully and prudently to the structuralist, the person d'affaires, who says, my job is to take your qualitative goals, that this is a gift, and a gift of love and designed to enhance someone's life. My job is to incorporate that culture into your documents. That's the essence of the job. And let me say, the tragedy is that this doesn't happen often enough. Now, all the way back to our big theme, which is perhaps a way to wind up, is this. Until recently in history, the only people that had problems of financial capital and trusts and gifts were the 1 or 2%, particularly when land was old value. Jan and Donnie, you began this morning reminding the wonderful people that took their time, their treasure, to listen to us today, that we are about to have $100 trillion or more in just America. Think of the numbers around the world. We have never had so many people who will be touched by this issue of this morning. Never. This is the abundance that's been created since World War II. This is the amazing world we live in, a world in which we brought 5 billion people out of poverty in the last 50 years. 5 billion people. There's never been a time in human history where so few were impoverished. Now, is there more to do? Of course. But have we done a lot? Oh, this is an amazing time. So just this conversation this morning is going to be the conversation that millions of people will have because they are part of those waves of financial capital that are going to be flowing. So most important thing, please, the wonderful people who took their time this morning, think before you act. Think about what the meteor will be. What are you putting in it? And think, how will the person receive it? And can he or she integrate it? And is there a person de confiance along who will make sure that your gift of love is understood by the recipient? What the recipient will do, heaven knows. But we can do all that to make it more likely that they will have a good integration and then regenerate, and that will become part of the dynamic regeneration.
So, Jay, for me personally, it was a wonderful time once again with you, and let me add just this thought. I mean, you mentioned this. That's the first largest wealth transfer what we see in history, and I would say the second is standing in front of the door, and,
yes.
it will be much more greater, and there is just that should be our duty and our responsibility to help these families, especially these recipients, to integrate this kind of gift that they come with greater power and with more opportunities, and take their opportunities in the right way and use this in the right way for themselves, but also for the society, because we need this undoubtedly. So it was a great pleasure and a great honor, and many thanks for your time. I mean, you went, I guess, to breakfast. You went to coffee, and it was a great time. Many thanks, Jay.
Well, thank you very much, Jay.
And to all of us, good luck, Godspeed, and make gifts, not transfers.
Many thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to C100 Global Wisdom Talks. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit. For more resources and insights, visit www.cu100global.com.